This is the Texas Land Guys podcast, hosted by brothers Tim Dosch and Tom Dosch. With their partners David Marshall and Trip Rich, they have built DMRE, the leading land brokerage in Texas. With decades of experience brokering deals between landowners and real estate developers, they take you inside the deals that move the market.
Welcome to the Texas Land Guys podcast. We have Tim Dosch, David Marshall joining us in Houston today. How are you guys doing?
We're doing great.
Thanks for having me back, guys.
Yeah, David, good to see you. I've tried to have you on the podcast here recently, and David's schedule is sometimes challenging to align. I should say all of our schedules can be challenging.
He's busy for sure
to align. But good to have you back on. I know we were talking this morning about just the time of year we're in, and we have college football is back in full swing, but you guys are coaching some I guess not quite at that level, but coaching some teams right now. So I know that's also keeping you busy outside of the office.
Yeah, it's been fun. I'm helping coach. My son Luke is playing 8th grade football for our school for Second Baptist, and so I'm helping coach. They let the dads be assistant coaches, some of the dads, and so that's been a really fun time, just getting to know all the boys and getting to coach him. And Luke's a quarterback, so we had a big game last night. He had a pretty incredible long bomb he threw, go route. It was about a 45-yard pass, so it was a big pass. So he was pretty excited about that, and it was a big win. So it's just it's fun getting to experience that with your kids and their friends, and just seeing them get better and improve.
Yeah, no, it really is. I'm coaching my youngest daughter's select softball team, and I've been coaching this team for 4 years now, and it's really been fun to see, them grow, as a team and improve as a team. But it's starting to, they're getting to the age where, it's starting to be some really, really good softball. And, we've got a tournament this weekend, so they'll be out playing softball all day Saturday and Sunday, and probably play, anywhere from 6 to 7 games over a course of 2 days. But like I said, and kind of like Tim said as well, it's just fun being out there with your kid, being there, experiencing that with them. And it's also been really neat to see, the team grow from 4th, 5th graders to 8th graders now.
It's that level of softball is pretty fun to watch too, because they're so good, and just the games are so fast and exciting. That's pretty cool.
It is, yeah. It's and they're at the age now where it's real softball.
Yeah,
and there are some really, really good players out there. So it's fun. It's been fun to see it all come together.
Yeah, you have the kind of pitching probably that's like lockdown pitching, where some of the girls aren't even really that hittable.
Yeah, that's right. And they're throwing mid 50s to high 50s from 43 feet away, which is equivalent to baseball. I don't know what it is, but it's in the probably mid to upper 80s.
Reaction time.
And then they've got now we're at the age where these girls are throwing 3 or 4 different pitches, from change-ups to fastballs to rise balls to drop balls, you name it. So it's getting difficult for the hitters.
Yeah, you're bringing back a lot of memories, David. Tim and I have 4 sisters, and they all played softball. Our oldest sister played college, and my other sisters played really competitively. So all growing up, we spent I don't know how many countless hours.
We watched
on
a lot
the
of
fields.
games.
Watched a lot of games. I went and caught my sister, they were all pitchers, and so I remember what you're talking about, being 43 feet away, and she threw really hard and the drop balls. So I'd sit on a bucket and just try to protect myself when she would pitch, and she had her pitching coach there. I mean, it was really intense. It's I've seen how they've compared that to the MLB, and it's like a college softball pitchers throwing mid to high 90s, and nobody can hit her. You get those professional players out there, and they can't hit them. It's just so different.
The older you get, the scarier it is to catch someone like that. Like even just catching my son when he's pitching and throwing really hard, it's like you start realizing how vulnerable you are.
Yeah.
If the ball bounces in front of you and takes a crazy bounce. I mean, I don't know. I had a lot more confidence when I was younger.
Well, it's been fun. I definitely, growing up, I was a huge baseball fan, and I probably had never seen a softball game up until probably about 10 years ago when my daughter started playing. But now I'll find myself, if we're watching TV at the house, my wife and I, if you have a baseball game on or the Women's College World Series, I find myself wanting to watch the Women's College World Series in softball now over a baseball game. So, and to Tim's point, it's a quicker, faster game.
Well, when you're a girl dad, I guess, David, you're even wearing the pink shirt today. So
That's right.
Fully embracing it. That's good. Well, I thought that's an interesting thing to talk about. Just sports. We all played sports growing up, started when we were really young. And our business, there's a lot of analogies to sports. I think we use sports analogies probably more than anything else when we're thinking about doing deals or working together as a team or, persevering. So today I thought it'd be good to talk about grit and tenacity in our business and how we see that. And I think we see it in a lot of different ways. But for all of us, I think it started back when we were playing sports as kids and just how hard we had to work and learning to be disciplined and apply ourselves. And I think we were all good athletes, but none of us were like superstar, just natural athletes. And so we all knew it took a lot of hard work. And David, when you were at Memorial High School running the wishbone, quarterback sneaking, as the quarterback, I know that was a hard work position, just getting hit and beat up every day.
Yeah, no, for sure. I probably weighed 165 pounds. And you had guys who crossed the line across the field from you who were 250 pounds. And, I didn't like to get hit. I don't think anybody likes to get hit, but it's part of the game. But no, I think you learn so much from sports, like Tom said. And, I try to preach this to, the teams that I've coached, and especially, my daughter's select softball team. I was like, you don't get better in games, you get better in practice. And it's not just practicing in the team's scheduled practices. You got to do more work outside that. You've got to practice on your own at home, or get your parents or a friend. If all you're doing is just showing up to the regularly scheduled team practices, you're only going to go so far and get so good. You got to put that extra work in, that extra effort outside of the team practices. And I try to preach that and stress that to them because they're at the age now where, they're 8th grade, they're moving into high school next year. Not everybody's going to make the team. And, the girls who put in the work or the boys who put in the work outside of practices, they've got a lot higher and better chance of making the team.
I think there's almost kind of a fallacy when we think about either superstar athletes or superstar performers. Maybe it's in business, it's a broker, developer, and we think this person is just incredible. They're so good, they're so skilled. If you look at the stories, just taking athletes, for example, like Michael Jordan, or you think Larry Bird, Kobe Bryant, Tom Brady, these people we look up to and respect, who were very good and very dominant. There was also unbelievable work ethic and unbelievable tenacity and grit to become the best and to stay the best and to be that dominant. And I think I work with that with my son because I think as a kid, he can throw the ball easily 50 yards. He's got a great arm, and you think I can just go out there and I have the skills, so I can just go out there and be the best. And I was like, that's not the way it works. No one goes out there and they're the best. The guys who are the best go out there and, they have some natural skill, but they learn the game and they get better and better every single time. They do more reps. They make a lot of mistakes, and they self-correct as they go and get better. And it's the same thing in business. You're going to have some natural skill, but you need to continue to work on refining that and growing that over time, and putting the work in. And it's not very sexy. It's not very fun sometimes, to put that work in, but that's what actually makes you really effective and really, really good.
Yeah, Tim, you were talking earlier about some of what Luke has to do, just being a quarterback, and it's so competitive now. And so some of the kind of what David's referring to, just practicing on his own and getting his own quarterback coaches to help him, and just some of the drills that he's doing. I mean, it's kind of interesting if you go into that a little bit, because I don't think we can remove that too far from what we should still be doing to hone our craft and business and getting better every day.
Yeah, I think as a kid, he can go play 7-on-7 or kind of backyard football and run and throw the ball and be accurate, and he's got a great arm. But then he goes and works with a quarterback coach, and instead of running around the field throwing the ball, he's literally standing stationary and going through an hour of breaking the throwing motion down into like 50 different parts and then putting it back together and doing all these exercises to perfect it. And he's like, Dad, this is so brutal. It's so boring. Like, we just keep doing the same thing. Why can't we just go throw the ball? And I was like, Luke, what you need to learn is that you're trying to get so good at this that it becomes muscle memory. So when you're on the field, you do it the right way. You have to think about, am I holding the ball right? Am I throwing it right? Do I step in my throw? That's what it takes to be at an elite level. A lot of people can go throw the ball, but you want to be at an elite level and you want to win consistently. You have to have that level of diligence and working on your craft. And so I think applying it back to business, if you're an entrepreneur, or you're a broker, maybe you're a developer, what is your craft and what skill level do you bring to the table? I like to think of it in terms of what value do you bring to the table? How are you helping someone else? And then how do I help someone else more? How do I increase that value delivery? Where are the holes in that? Where are the places where maybe I'm detracting from my value add? And then how do I increase that over time? And when you have that dedication to increasing your value proposition over time, that's when you have true grit and tenacity. Because you're going to have a lot of times where you don't want to keep adding value because it doesn't feel like something that you really want to do because it's hard work.
That's good. Why don't we tie it to our business a little bit and talk about maybe starting more at like the deal level. I think tenacity and grit are really important within real estate, especially though within brokerage and within land brokerage. Land brokerage is really unique. We've talked about it on the podcast. The land deals that we work on, since they're primarily development deals, they take a long time. So I was talking to a prospective hire yesterday that came in for an interview and just told him, if you go and do leasing, you might, get in and start signing leases within, a month or two of the job. And these leases can go really quick. They're normally going to be a lot smaller, transactions, especially when you're starting out. But on the land side, a 3-month land transaction is like lightning fast. And most land transactions probably take closer to a year. But that's from like going under contract to when they close. And there's a lot of work that precedes that too. So I think the land business, it really requires a lot of tenacity, but also it requires a lot of grit because the deals can take so long and there can be so many ups and downs. And so I was thinking we could talk a little bit about how we see the importance of that, especially just in the starting out. So if you're starting out in the land business, and the type of advice we would be giving to new team members on, maybe similar to what you're talking about. You're throwing passes in the backyard and you feel like you're really accurate, but once you're getting rushed by a 250-pound linebacker, and you're running for your life, it's a lot harder. And maybe you have a little bit of immediate success in the business and you feel like, I've got this. But then the market changes or something happens and you realize, wow, this is a lot harder than I thought.
Yeah, what I was going to say is maybe defining grit and tenacity a little bit, because I think those are two different words. They kind of communicate the same thing, but in different ways. And I would say that tenacity is a lot about dedication and follow-up and consistency. So you're constantly, daily, maybe even hour by hour, pursuing this goal, which is going to lead to action. It's going to lead to follow-ups, to preparation, to strategy, to planning, all those kind of things. Grit, to me, is more about being able to withstand adversity and difficulty over time and stay consistent. And so I think that there are two different things that can kind of link up and go together a little bit. And I think both are very important for our business. If you want to be a successful land broker, if you're not tenacious all the time, just some of the time, you're going to have a lot weaker results than the guy who's every single day, or the girl every single day, dedicated to follow up, to pushing, to just everything I can do to move the ball, and to add value. I'm going to keep doing it. And then, unfortunately, in our business, there's a lot of bad days that are not your fault. There's a lot of bad markets where things don't work. There's deals where, there's an environmental problem that no one knew about. It came up. There's some easement issue, some title issue that comes up. We've had that happen so much this year with deals where there's it's a real deal. There's capital for the deal, but there's a side issue that kills the deal. And the grit part of that is taking those punches and coming back the next day and find another deal and working on that deal, and not letting those, emotional roller coasters, keep you from that daily, work ethic and pushing to provide value for your clients.
Yeah, in this business, and probably most businesses, but this business for sure, the brokerage business, you're going to be told no a heck of a lot more times than you're going to be told yes. And so to Tim's point, the grit is, you're hearing no probably multiple times a day. and not hearing nearly as many yeses. So it's being able to keep pushing, keep at it, even though that's not the answer you want to hear. Stick with it. And I think a great example of grit and tenacity that we experienced early on in our careers was back in the Great Recession, when everything fell apart. No deals were closing, but we had one deal that actually did close, and it pushed into late 2008 and closed in late 2008, and that might have been the only deal we closed that year. But we had to stick with it, push hard, and I'm very thankful that I experienced such a difficult time in the market and, in getting deals done early on in my career. It just showed me not to take, the good markets for granted. And so I think that was very important and very, in my growth, I think both of our growths, very, very good for us to experience that early on.
Yeah, you guys talked about it when we did the episodes on our company history. But to your point, David, I remember you guys sharing that there was the one deal that closed, but every single day you came into the office and worked and tried to put other deals together. You didn't know that only one deal was going to close, but you guys went in and acted like every day you could potentially put more deals together. That's what you have to do. That's the tenacity that you have to have. What doesn't work, and I think what you were just saying, Tim, is you can't just say, well, the market's hard, I'm just gonna take some time off. Because I think an important point there is the flip side of that is coming out of the recession. So I don't know if this would have been like 2010, 2011, but you've both shared that, the kind of what was mentioned by people in the market was like, where did these guys come from? Like, now suddenly Tim and David are out closing land deals like all over the market. They're getting big listings. None of that happens if you just focused on that one deal, didn't try to do anything else in 08 and 09, and basically just resigned yourself to, I'll go play golf because the market's hard, but you guys showed a lot of grit and tenacity, and there was no short-term payoff. It was really hard, but then there was a longer-term payoff from that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the worst things that can happen to someone when they're young is early, easy success, because it trains you in all the wrong ways. And I think all of us, or at least me, when I started, there's a sense of entitlement, that you deserve something, a lot of times because we think we're skilled, and so I deserve some success. And when you get beat up a lot by the market and going through the Great Recession, like David just talked about, you tend to realize you have to earn the success. And just because you've had success doesn't mean that you still deserve more success. You got to keep earning the success. And again, just connecting it to adding value. Once you stop adding value to your clients or the people you work with, you're not going to have the success that you had before. And I think it's easy to get complacent and to stop, being tenacious and to stop driving and pushing every day to be better. And that's a challenge I think all of us consistently have, is to keep coming back and keep working. And it can be a grind. And I think we talk a lot about this as a marathon. A lot of people look at this business as, I want to go make a lot of money, and they look at it almost as a sprint, with there's a specific reward of me making a lot of money. And the reality is, we've done hundreds of deals, probably close to 1,000 deals now, and you have to keep doing deals. You have to keep earning that success, and it's a marathon. It's staying in it and having that grit and tenacity on an ongoing basis, and you're never going to get to a place where it's just handed to you.
Yeah, and you learn so much about yourself during that time as well. And not to go back to the sports analogy, but it's kind of like, when you lose, when your team loses, you learn a lot about your team and yourself on how you respond to that difficult time or that difficult loss. And, as a team and as a player, or in our situation as a broker, you're going to bounce back. And if you want to be successful and good, you got to. Mm-hmm. So you learn so much from those difficult times, and they're very valuable. Yes, we want everything to go right and everything to close, and you want to win all the games. But the reality is, at the end of the day, what you learn from those difficult times and what you learn from those difficult losses is so valuable. And don't take those for granted, because that's where you learn a lot about yourself, and a lot of growth comes from it as well.
Yeah, that resonates with me, David, because last night I got an email that a deal that we were working on, really close to signing up a listing in an area that we've sold like pretty much every tract that's sold in the last 3 years around it. they emailed back, and it was the classic, we have a I think they called it a portfolio wide relationship with this other broker. And I'm thinking, well, that's nice to know after we've done a BOV and we've spent all this time, working on it and giving you a value, proving it up. We even brought them an offer, but they have this portfolio wide relationship. And, that getting a no like that, really, I was talking to Trey about it, and we were talking about, is there anything that we could have done better? And I'm like, well, we've sold every site around it. We've valued it for them. And then we brought them an offer within the value range that we said would be there. There's really nothing else we could have done. I mean, they had a portfolio wide relationship with this other group, but you have to get used to not winning every game, and it's frustrating because I think in that case, I really believed that had they hired us, we would have really executed well. And unfortunately, they're leaving value on the table by not hiring us, and that's unfortunate because I can tell them that, but people I'm talking to, I think, did want to hire us, and the decision was more of like a bigger corporate decision. But we've had that happen a lot. The cool thing about tenacity and grit is, and it could easily happen in this case, there's a really good chance we'll be listing that property. It just won't be right now because there's so many of those where we don't get picked the first time. It doesn't sell, or they aren't able to sell it, and then we get hired. And I know you guys have had the same thing where we've been hired so many times as the second or third broker, and then we've been able to execute and sell the property.
I think that's a great point to talk about, because there's a lot of times that you do everything right, you work really hard, you provide value, you have grit and tenacity the whole way, and you deserve to get the reward for that, and you don't get it. And that happens all the time in our business. And I think that you have to be the kind of person that responds to that by being motivated to continue to go out and do it and try and do it better. And also realize sometimes it's just not my fault. It's not my team's fault. We did everything we could. We didn't get that one. We're going to go out and we're going to fight again. And I think that could be demoralizing. Because sometimes there could be a string of 10 of those things that happen, in a month or in a certain period of time where there's not a lot of encouragement, not a lot of benefit, and you think, man, we deserve this. We did everything we were supposed to do, and this business is not always very forgiving. It can be really tough from that standpoint. It rewards the people that stay in it and continue to push hard and work hard, and over time, they get the benefit of the value that they add.
Yeah, I was going to say you could almost add endurance to this concept of tenacity and grit, and maybe endurance is pretty tied to grit, but it's a little bit of the idea of if you can have tenacity and if you can show grit through the hard times, then you're going to endure through the hard times. And if you end up still standing, there's going to be so many people that aren't standing.
Yeah.
And I've only been doing this now almost 15 years, and there's a lot of people that we saw out in the market and kind of competed with, and we go and they would be pitching a land deal, we'd be pitching a land deal, and they're not even in the business anymore, or they've switched companies 3 or 4 times, and it's just not, it's interesting how it's just sticking with it, providing a constant value to your clients, really focusing on reputation, trying to do things the right way. It's a long-term mindset, but it pays off in the long term, even if it's not paying off every single day in the short term.
And another good word, this probably goes hand in hand, I think Tim mentioned earlier, is consistency. It's not just, I got nothing to do, I'm going to go, hit some balls off the tee. It's having that schedule. It's like, all right, it's 5 o'clock. It's time for me to go out and hit for 30 minutes, or go out in the backyard like Luke and throw, passes for 30 minutes. And having that schedule, and being consistent with it and sticking to it. And that's hard to do.
I think ultimately your motivation is really critical. And we work so often with families that have land, that maybe have had land for a long time, and they're probably the most rewarding and the most challenging deals that we work on, because a lot of times these families, it's their biggest asset. It's very important that they don't make a mistake, and then at the same time, they're not sophisticated in our business. It's just not their core business. They're good at something else, and there's a level of relational building and trust that has to happen. And if your motivation is about the fee or the money, or you call it the reward, instead of about truly helping this family or helping this person to achieve their goals. Maybe that's maximizing the price. Maybe it's we need to close in a certain amount of time to get this money in a certain amount of time because we're going to use it for something. But whatever that is, when you become fully invested in helping them achieve their goals, you're able to have a really healthy grit and tenacity that actually is about them and not about you. But when your ultimate goal is to get the reward for you and it's selfish based, that's when I think maybe the grit and tenacity could be there for a while, but it doesn't fall through long term. Because I mean, for example, there's many of these deals that it's a 10-year relationship of us following up, being patient, saying, hey, we'd like to list your property, we'd like to sell it for you, telling them sometimes, let's not go right now. The market's not right. Let's wait a year. Let's wait 2 years. They're not ready, all these different things. And it's this patient follow-up, caring about them, making sure that they feel good about the deal. Because at the end of the day, we could know this is a good price, this is right, you should do this. If they don't feel a piece about it or feel good about it, that's not a good deal for them. So I think, having that right motivation. And Tom, you said you read a book called The Motive by Patrick Lencioni that I think was along those same lines of your motivation over time becomes revealed. And I think it will show if the tenacity and grit you have is healthy and others focused or unhealthy and self-focused, which I think can become self-defeating over time.
Yeah, I'm actually finishing that book right now for the second time. It's really good. And really what he's talking about in that book is Patrick Lencioni's written all these business books that we've talked about, but more recently he wrote this book called The Motive, because what he's understood is that what's motivating a leader is actually more important than really anything else. And if the leader, the story is, because he always writes his books as like an allegory, the story is a guy that's a CEO. And the reason he's a CEO is because he feels like he deserves to be a CEO, because he's been, and he's been working 20 years and he earned the right to be a CEO, but he doesn't actually want to do the job of a CEO. And so he interacts with another CEO that's a competitor that has a company that's, doing a whole lot better. And that guy is a CEO because he actually feels the responsibility to be the CEO for his company and to do the job to the best of his ability. And so then he ties in a lot of the other concepts from his other business books and how the guy runs that more successful company. So at the end of the book, the CEO that, has this bad motivation basically decides to let the other guy be the CEO, the companies merge, and he demotes himself. And he's a lot happier because he's like, I didn't actually want to be the CEO. I just thought that I deserved to be the CEO, but I didn't want to do the job. And anyway, it's a really good book. It has a lot of good self-reflecting questions in it. And I think what you're talking about, Tim, it's really important to tie it to our business because there's also a negative side of tenacity too. Tenacity you can go too far. And I know I've mentioned it in the past, and I know not all car salesmen are bad, but there is that stereotype of like the really tenacious car salesman that he's really just trying to get the sale. And that's what he cares about. And I think we all know that stereotype, and whether or not it's normally true or not, that's not what we're trying to do as land brokers. We're trying to take a longer term mindset and really add value. Like yesterday, I told a client they own a property they've been stuck in for a while. They're a developer, but there's this new Senate Bill 840. There's an opportunity now that you can go build additional density on the property. And I told him, I know I can bring a buyer now, and they can make a nice profit and get out of it. But I told him, you're a developer. You should explore looking into doing a tax credit development on this. It's in a DDA zone. You guys have talked in the past about doing tax credit development. So I'll get paid nothing for that advice. And if he ultimately goes and builds it himself, but that could be better for them. And just having that longer term mindset of what's better for the client, not necessarily what gets me paid tomorrow. And he may decide that, they don't want to do that, and he wants us to list the property. And so we'll go do that for him. And I know we can have a good result there. But I think it's really important to be thinking what's better for the client, and then that is going to be better for us long term. And it's also just prioritizing the relationship over what you think is best for yourself.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's so super important and something that you definitely need to do. A lot of times, put yourself in their shoes, put yourself on their side of the table, because with a lot of our clients, this is probably the biggest monetary decision or business decision they'll make in their lives if they own property or real estate. And it's equivalent, if not bigger than, somebody buying or selling a home. And so what I try to do is put myself in their shoes, put myself on their side of the table, and remember that, this is a super important decision that they're about to make. And we're not there to just make a commission. We're there to help them and advise them and, point them in the right direction and show them what we think's best for them. And like you said, Tom, a lot of times it might be, hey, don't sell, look into self-developing it, or, hey, now's not the right time to sell. Let's wait 6 months and then talk again, or let's wait 12 months and let's talk then.
Yeah, I think if you're going to be a broker, a good broker, I think should be defined by making the outcome of the deal the best for your client. And that might sound obvious and simple. Of course, that's what it should be. But I think most of the time, that's not what it is. I think, like you're saying, Tom, with the car salesman analogy, when you think about sales, the people who are really good are normally very driven, and they're very tenacious, and they're pushing, and they're fighting hard. But I think there's one of the reasons there is a bad connotation sometimes with brokers, in our business, is that people think it's really just all about you. You're just trying to get another deal closed. You don't really care if this is optimal for me and it's good for me. And so I think, like David was just talking about, when you're willing to basically hand it back to them and say, hey, I want you to do what you feel is best. I'm going to give you all the information, give you the best advice I can, but it's your decision. I'm not going to push you if you're not comfortable. Being willing to be generous like that, and still be helpful in serving them, I think it almost like shocks people a little bit, because I think that they just assume all we care about is the fee. And if you're going to be someone who doesn't just care about the fee, you can't just be like that and never have to prove it. You're going to have to prove it all the time by doing the right thing and giving the fee up. And but I think when you do that, there's like a joy and a great feeling of like, I'm helping this person, I'm doing what's best for them. I'm not putting myself first and my desires first. And there's plenty of deals. There's plenty of fees we can go make. We don't have to force it on someone that's not ready or it's not going to serve them to do the transaction right now.
Yeah, and we've tried to be really intentional, even just with the way we've decided that we're going to work as a team and we're going to compensate our brokers differently. Because, traditional model, if you're getting a really healthy cut of the overall fee and just working by yourself, that's a pretty big motivation to just get the deal done. And you're going to just take away a huge check. And what we've done instead is said, we're all going to work as a team. We're going to pay our young guys salaries because they really haven't been in the business long enough to go do deals. If you think about someone that's like 2 months out of college trying to throw a deal together, that's probably not best for the client. That you have someone that has no idea what they're doing and they're trying to do a deal because they're 100% commission. And if they don't do a deal, they can't stay in the business because they can't put food on the table. And so that just naturally creates, I think, the stereotypical broker, that they're just out there for the fee because they have to be. I mean, they legitimately, the deal doesn't close. They can't provide for themselves. So I mean, their family or someone's got to write them a check just to live off of. So we've been really intentional about, we don't want our young guys or girls to just be thinking about, I got to get a deal closed. We want them to be thinking about, how do I learn this business? And then how do I serve the client through the team really well? And that's worked really good for us. And we've been able to, grow teams and really create just incredible success and take a lot of market share. And in a lot of ways, I was explaining it to this young guy yesterday. It's because, if you're, football player, if you go out there with one guy on your team on the field against a team of 11, who do you think is going to win? And that's really our approach. Our approach has been, we're going to be a team. Or same thing with basketball, 1-on-5 doesn't really matter. The 5 are going to win against the 1. So I think that just even the compensation a lot of times leads to the actions. And we've really tried to be intentional around putting teamwork first and really thinking about what value we're adding to the client. That's always been really important. And that allows you to be tenacious and to show grit for the long term, but you have the right foundation, and you can keep coming back to that when you're getting the no's that you've been talking about, David, where it's just difficult and you're getting no's, but you keep coming back to, I'm serving the client, I'm adding value. We're doing this in a team concept. Maybe I'm having a hard week, but Tim's not, or David's not. And sometimes we're all going to have a hard week, but it's pretty rare in a team environment that everyone's having a hard week at the same time. Normally it's like someone's having a really good week and someone's having a really bad week, and everyone else is kind of like in the middle.
Yeah, I think that's why values are so important to bring into this discussion. I love our values of being hungry, humble, smart. And the humble piece, I think, is such an important piece to talk about, because that will save you from this kind of unhealthy reward-based focus and work where you're just trying to get everything for yourself and you're thinking about yourself. When you're humble, you're thinking about other people. And someone who's humble but then they have grit and tenacity is a very attractive person, and they're a great team member. And so I think if you're going to be a team, you have to be a values-based team to be a successful team. And I think you're right. When you're individually compensated, focused, and you're kind of isolated and you're by yourself, there's just incredible temptation to start to do things from motivation that's not the best motivation. It's more of a, and a lot of times it's not necessarily selfish, it's about survival. Like you're saying, especially a young broker, I just got to survive. I just got to get a deal. I'm starving over here. And that doesn't align you with actually having a grit and tenacity that might be healthy for your client and being able to be patient, for what's best for your client.
At the end of the day, I think, and not to sound corny or anything, the golden rule: treat people the way you want to be treated, right? And if I'm selling a property and I own a property, I want my broker advising me on what's the best decision for me, not for them. And it's as simple as that.
Yeah, and you would want your broker having some tenacity, like you'd want them following up and working it hard, and like you want to know that they're thinking about you and that they're thinking about your interests, so that I think that's a really good point.
I think maybe just one more thing to add is the importance of honesty with this, because I think a lot of brokers are really good at kind of some BS of, I'm just working so hard for you, this is so difficult, and they know how to kind of position it with the client. So the client's like, wow, that my broker's just out there like, really fighting for me and stuff. But the reality is they're not really trying to seek their client's best interest. They're still trying to just get the deal done for themselves and trying to get the fee. And so I think when you're actually very honest and that you are truly doing everything for the client's best interests, versus just paying lip service. I think everybody knows the lip service they need to pay to someone to make them think that they're doing the right thing, when maybe they're not fully doing the right thing.
Well, guys, I think this was a good episode. David, thanks for joining to talk about this. There's a lot of examples just in the business and deals. And Tim, you mentioned 10 years. I mean, I know there's deals that we've worked on for 8 years as listings where the market or just really challenging sites with all kinds of issues where it took a lot of just grit to stick with it. And the neat thing is you look back on those and like I'm thinking about one specifically where it sold and the seller did really well on it. And, fortunately it all worked out. It was a lot of kind of just trudging through and hard work to get there. But it's been fun to do it with you guys. And I know we've been through some down markets together too. I joined after the GFC, but there's been others and COVID and things that have happened. And we know there's going to be more coming. And so it's just kind of part of the business. And it probably makes it more interesting at the end of the day because we learn a lot going through these hard times together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you for listening to the podcast today. Go to our website, dmre.com, to learn more about DMRE, and feel free to send us an email, reach out with any questions you have, anything you want us to discuss on the podcast.
Thanks, guys.
Thank y'all.
Thank you for listening to our podcast today. If you have questions about land you own in Texas, send us an email at texaslandguys@dmre.com and follow us on LinkedIn to stay updated.